Alright, Attack on Titan Q&A. This video is long overdue, but much like how this show ended with it having about 17 different final parts, we're gonna be doing that too. Attack on Titan Q&A part 1 of 70, maybe. But yeah, I made a community post a while ago when I initially finished the story, actually about 2 weeks ago. And well, I kind of feel bad about leaving those questions unanswered, even though again, you're not gonna be seeing this video for a long time on YouTube. But yes, either way. On to the questions. So you finally get the Eren is a cuckoo joke. Yep, seeing the structure of this sentence hurts my brain, but pretty much, what did you think about the end? Again, I have been consuming a lot of Attack on Titan videos and rewatching the show. I've been doing that a lot in the time in between first finishing it. My initial reaction to it, obviously, if you saw it, was I thought it was a perfect ending. And I still think that. For like the most basic surface level hate that it gets for its ending, that I still see. I completely get it. I understand people who like Attack on Titan. A lot of people, they like it for the action. The action, the crazy shit, all that. The animation, particularly when people talk about Attack on Titan, they mainly talk about seasons 1 to 3. But I say that you don't have a complete show without the final season. In terms of, yeah, how I felt about the ending, again, I think it was perfect. I mean, from the beginning of the show, I sort of predicted that it would have ended that way, in the sense that, like, it's not gonna be your stereotypical shonen fantasy ending where it's like they defeated the evil, which I guess you could say was Eren, and then everyone lived happily ever after. And while they did, at least our main characters did, where a lot of the criticism obviously comes from is just the fact that time moves on and war happens anyway, and like the entire world basically destroys itself. But again, that was like the theme throughout all of Attack on Titan. That's why when it happened, though I was initially shocked, obviously I wasn't expecting them to like jump thousands of hundreds of years in the future, I think it's the best ending for that. Just like the cycle never ends, which again was the biggest theme, especially in the final season, of just the never-ending cycle. And just this whole thing of like peace is never guaranteed. It ends in that stereotypical way in the sense that our main characters got to live a good life finally, free of titans, free of war, at least for the time being, albeit with the rest of the world being 80% dead. You know, it's the saying of do the ends justify the means, but with this show it's like do the means or the ends justify anything. Again, this is why this is a fascinating show that I can't wait to talk about with other friends and other people, just because I feel like everybody has an initial view of it differently. I think I'm one of the few though who maybe like initially saw it and still was just like, wow, that was perfect. I just don't see how you can look at the collective package that is Attack on Titan and say that it has at all not a good ending. But yeah, that's pretty much the condensed version of what I think about that. This show has its fair share of brutal and even awesome deaths. But what are some deaths that you think are undeserved or maybe should not have happened? My initial gut response is like Sasha. But even still, all the way at the end, I still think Hannes' death was bullshit. Him dying, like, I fully expected that to happen. It's just the way it happened. Don't get me wrong, it's still an effective death. I love it just in the sense of how it fully just broke Eren at that time. And it was a death that needed to happen at that moment. And after like rewatching season 2 and seeing the build up with Hannes to that moment, it's just mainly because you go through pretty much the entirety of season 1 and then a good chunk of season 2 without seeing Hannes for a long time. Then he comes back just to die. I just feel like there was so much room for sort of a redemption kind of story, which I mean, he was so close to getting that redemption though. What happens in the very first episode, like he goes up to fight Smiling Titan and then like he runs away. But of course, now I look at that way differently because that intimidation that just shafted his confidence was most likely Eren being like, you're not supposed to die yet, go away. I guess just in terms of like undeserved deaths, I mean, Marco did not deserve the fate that befell him at all, but it just was the unfortunate thing of he was in the worst possible place at the worst possible time and heard things that he should not have heard. And of course, all the scouts that like Annie killed, especially Squad Levi. But other than that, it's just like how the show portrays death, especially like sacrifices. You know, of course, I think though he didn't die in the moment, like Erwin's last charge obviously is just one of the best deaths ever. One could only wish to have as badass a death as that. I mean, again, even though he didn't die in that moment is what led to his death. I mean, even like Hanji's death as well, just like those kind of moments, you know, it's just like if only we could ever have a last moment like that. Most of us are gonna die, you know, of some illness, just rotting in our bed, some quick accident or something, or just brutal stuff, you know. If one could ever never choose how they would die. It's those kind of moments where it's just like, you know, you're facing your own death and you know it's gonna be your death, but you're doing it for the greater good and you still like smile. That's something I did. I mean, not really comparing the two, but like what got me more, I guess, hype with Hanji's death over Erwin's was just that Hanji faced the end smiling, whereas Erwin, you know, faced it screaming. The deaths in this show have always been fitting, though there may be deaths that, you know, I kind of feel are undeserved, maybe, you know, like Sasha, Hannes. When I break them down, it's like Isayama didn't just pick people off just for the sake of it. Like, of course, he introduced characters where it's just like, yep, you're not long for this world. Every death served a purpose, whether it be for a character or for story, stuff that carried all the way to the very end. But overall, I can't think of a death that should not have happened. It's just, yeah, I do feel like there's some deaths that maybe were undeserved, but Sasha's death is one where it's like, yeah, I know that like Isayama wanted her on the chopping block for the longest time, but it makes me sad thinking about what could have been, you know, if Sasha survived all the way to the end. You know, what would that last battle have looked like if she was there? And hell, what would her life after look like? Her father summed it up best. She spent her life as a hunter and went out of one forest and found herself in a bigger one. And though Sasha's death really just served as sort of character development for Gabby, again, it's a death that I still feel like served a purpose. It served a massive purpose. Death is scary, but in this show, a lot of times it actually is pretty cool. All right, now Kuakank sent a lot of questions, which I'm very grateful for. In season 1, episode 2, we saw how the government decided to send 250,000 people on a mission to reclaim Wall Maria, which, yes, was them sending them to their deaths because of the food shortage. What do you think of it? This was one of the first like major, I feel like, back and forth things that this show does. There's just like, where it really tests, I guess, the ideology of a person. I forget exactly what I talked about in that, but I pretty much was kind of split between it in that sense, where it's just like sending 250,000 people to die. That's fucked up. And like thinking back on the whole show, it's crazy that that was an event that we never saw. It had repercussions mainly for like the first little bit of the story, but it's like, it's something you just sort of forget about after a while. They sent basically a country of people to die. Like you can sort of look back on that. It's just like, if it was that many people, you figure it's just like, well, if we're gonna go die anyway, why don't we just like revolt against the government? Or hell, even set up a settlement somewhere else if we can. But you know, Titans are Titans. Thinking back on that, I get it from, you know, the government side of things at the beginning where, you know, there's only so much food to go around, only so much space. It is a thing though where it's the first call they made was to just send them to their deaths. There was other districts within Wall Rose, you know, it's not like it was just the one place. So it's like you could have spread people out. It's seeing that event unfold again and then like going into like the whole coup d'etat later in season 3 where I feel like that event should have been brought up a lot more, especially since that's what led to like Armin's grandpa dying and a bunch of other people dying. Whether or not it was a good or bad call, I mean, no debate there. It's fucked up. Was there other ways that that could have been solved? Absolutely. But like with that government at the time, they just went for just the quick and, in their view, the easier route, so they don't have to think about long term. But again, it's like one of the first big debates that this show brings up. Needs the many, needs the few. Someone said that all Erwin's plans always failed and resulted in a lot of deaths, while Armin's plans always succeeded. Why do you think? And then who would you choose, Armin or Erwin? Well, I mean, both ended up being commander. I mean, that was something, again, I didn't really think about as the show was playing out, obviously, but obviously after that choice is made between save Erwin, save Armin, that of course I then like really think back on the life of Erwin. It's ultimately cemented in the Battle of Shiganshina where, you know, you see Erwin's final gamble and Armin's final gamble, where it's like both of them are going into battle knowing that they will die. Whereas Erwin's thing with that was just like he went into that battle and there wasn't a 100% certainty that Levi would kill the Beast Titan, and it ultimately did not happen at that time. And a lot of people, Erwin himself included, died with the exception of Flock. Whereas with Armin's plan, it's like, though it was also a gamble, the only person's life that was at stake was himself. Armin's side of things, it's like, worst comes to worst, I'm the only one that dies. Eren will find a way because I believe in him, because I'm entrusting my dream, my everything to him. Hence their whole conversation before that all kicks off. I mean, in terms of every other plan though, it's not that every single one of Erwin's plans failed. I mean, you go all the way back to, I guess, the first time we really see Erwin in action, which is during the Female Titan in the 57th Expedition Beyond the Wall in season 1. Where, I mean, that's the first time you really see the, like, Erwin, how he operates, like, you know, he keeping information from people, even those that you think he trusts, and people dying, people he knew would die, all to get the female Titan trapped. And ultimately, though it worked, there's still like a what if scenario there of, you know, the whole thing with Eren, where it's, does he stop and fight Annie there, or does he keep going with Levi's squad and all that? Who's to say, like, maybe if Eren did stop there, like, would they have been able to capture Annie? I mean, Erwin's plan worked there, it's just he didn't account for Annie's ability to call other Titans to her. And then the plan even later, uncovering Annie's identity and then capturing her, which in its own way didn't succeed either, because it still led to Annie transforming and then the fight between Eren and her, and then Annie sealing herself away for 3 seasons. I'm rambling too long, but I wouldn't say his plans always failed. It's just Erwin, he placed so much on gambles. He always had everything worked out, but there was always one other factor that he doesn't account for, that I feel like Armin always had an inkling on, because like every time we see Erwin's plans happening, Armin always seemed to be the one that was like, wait, but what about, again, going back to like the battle in the forest with Annie, he already pieces together the entire plan. It's just like, this forest, it's perfect for ODM gear. Why did we go this long way around to get to this forest? Like, why are we here? It's like very sidetracked, and it's like, oh, it's because we're capturing the female Titan. And then of course, just we see literally the back and forth between Armin and Erwin. I mean, not really back and forth, but them just like Armin just sort of saying things to Erwin during the initial part of the Shinganshina battle, where he discovers the coffee maker and just does it, just like, maybe we should look at the walls and all that. And it's just, it says a lot when Erwin doesn't ever question Armin. He initially just trusts him. He gives him command as well. Erwin caught onto it during that battle. It's just like, Armin is the greatest weapon humanity has. Like, and though there is still a debate, obviously, for what was, I mean, there is no debate, you know, because by seeing the end of the story, it's like, no, it only ever was and should have been Armin. You know, it's just at the time, you know, choosing between Armin or Erwin, you know, though an argument maybe could have been made that, you know, Erwin maybe could have dealt with Marley and all that faster. You would have lost just that human side of things. And again, like, I would honestly love to see Isayama like handle like what if stories for Attack on Titan, like have him like fully detail out just like, here's what would happen if Erwin was chosen and became the Colossal Titan. I rambled on that for a lot longer than I should have, but that's why we're here. I love talking about this show. Do you think Erwin is a good leader who led humanity closer to victory, or a genocidal bad leader who killed literally his whole I guess this piggybacks off that. I mean, that stuff I still see talked about to this day on whether or not Erwin was a good leader. I mean, like, I've seen a lot of videos of people like, people don't understand Erwin. Again, that's why this show is so great, and just how it handles perspective, because you see like Erwin and all of them like go against the government, overthrow them, and it's like, yeah, you're rooting for them, and it's cool, but then that exact same thing happens later without Erwin, and it's sort of just like, like you find yourself not really rooting for them. I mean, in terms of him being a good leader, I mean, he's a motivational leader to say the least, but I mean, I guess that does tie into that. Like, he literally gets his whole squad killed. I mean, we know that Erwin obviously cares about people to an extent. Was Erwin a perfect man? Fucking far from it. There's no one in this story, no one in the world who is perfect. But as I thought about in the end, it's just like, Erwin was truly the embodiment of Shinzo Sasageo as an idea, but it wasn't until the very end of his life that when he became the one who had to do it. And we have that phenomenal scene where he's talking to Levi, and it's sort of just like, for the first time in his life, he's scared, where it's like the answers to everything that he's wanted to know his whole life are just right within his reach, but he can't have them, and he'll die never having them, which is the ultimate tragedy, but it is the ultimate beauty of Erwin's character as well. He lived his life chasing the dream, but never reaching it. I mean, there is that scary thought of just like, if Erwin lived, went to the basement, learned the truth about the outside world, what would have happened to him after that? I mean, that was the big thing leading up to the Battle of Shinganshina, was Levi asking him, it's just like, after we get to the basement, what happens next? And Erwin straight up said, just like, I don't know, which is again the whole basis for why Levi ultimately chooses to save Armin. It's just Erwin didn't know what life would look like after he gets the answers, whereas Armin never really cared about the answers. He wants to see what's beyond the walls and then just explore that, you know, he wants to pursue the future that way, whereas Erwin, he was only ever getting to a dead end. I mean, again, tying it back to him as a leader, no one can debate whether or not Erwin was an effective leader, because though things may not have always gone perfectly according to his plan, things worked out eventually at the cost of many, many lives, obviously, which is where obviously this debate comes in on whether or not he's a good leader. I mean, it's something that carries over into Flock's character as well, going into like the start of the final season, where it's like, oh, we did all this, but we lost like 6 scouts or something, but Flock is immediately just like, a worthy sacrifice, all for the sake of new Eldia. Had Erwin survived, it's kind of scary to think what would have happened, you know, having both Floch and Erwin. Like it or not, they both share the exact same ideologies, the exact same way of leading. It's just obviously Floch was younger and a lot more intense about it than Erwin, because, you know, Erwin, he was effective, but he wasn't someone who exactly wore his emotions on his sleeve. The most emotion other than just like stern, strong commander we ever saw was in his final moments. When he finally smiled, when like he had that shake in his voice, just like, they're right there, the answers. I mean, though Erwin coined the whole phrase Shinzo Sasageo, it's just sad because like that's his justification for sending these young men and women to their deaths, all for the sake of humanity, but yet they're just this little tiny pocket of humanity in the grand scope of the world. Though I would have loved to have seen Erwin survive the Battle of Shinganshina, it's good that he died when he did. Like, he still died believing and yearning for that dream, because if he had seen it, I would have seen an ending where all of them not only had to fight Floch, but had to fight Erwin as well. I fully see that Erwin probably would have sided with Eren without the crew having the Colossal Titan and not having Armin either. I doubt any of them would have gotten farther. They never would have even gotten off the island. Yeah, when it comes to Erwin, I have a lot to talk about. I mean, fucking hell, he's probably my favorite character in this whole thing, but either way, that's what I think about Erwin as a leader. I realize I'm probably not really answering these questions fully, but I mean, that's just the thing of it. It's like, I can't really fully just give a yes or no answer. Was he a good leader? Yes. Was he a bad leader? Yes, he was Erwin. But next question. What do you think about Marleyans versus Eldians? What caused the war between them? Who's in the right, who's in the wrong? I mean, that's the whole basis for the entire story, is just the Marleyans continuously subjugating these Eldians, using them as weapons, which again, you can argue are justified because it goes all the way back to what we see with the original, you know, King Fritz and then Ymir, where it's like they have that Titan power and then they subjugate the world pretty much. And I would honestly love to see the full story of what happens. Like, I would say more from when Ymir dies and then like the Great Titan War that precedes. Because, like, you know, we hear about all that, like how Marley took 4 of the 9 or 5 of them, however many, and just what led them to today. In terms of who's in the right, who's in the wrong, who's to judge? It all really comes back to King Fritz, where it's just like he used that power to subjugate and conquer. It was wrong in that sense that he did that, caused all that suffering, which then, you know, carried on forever. You know, it's like, eat my daughters and then pass on this power to your descendants. Like, if you want to know what the right thing would have been, I mean, it would have been the what if scenario that we saw at the very end in Ymir's mind, where it's like she didn't jump in front of the spear and Fritz died, and then, you know, Ymir died never passing on that power, and then maybe just full stopped there. I mean, the worst part of it is just the whole thing of each side continuously blaming the other for what has happened, and even though all of what originally started, all of it is ancient history at that point. I do still think at the very end the Marleyans and the rest of the world still are justified in their fear of the Eldians, because that fear came to their doorstep and trampled it, as well as 80% of the world. So in terms of who's right, who's wrong, I can't answer that, but I can say that everyone's fears about Eldia were valid, because the rumbling happened. And though they could have avoided it by, you know, just like coming to some peace or understanding with the Eldians, instead of just perpetuating violence and an endless cycle that eventually would have led to this one way or another, you can't exactly fully blame Eren for that, because that was the only really correct route in his eyes, because it wouldn't have stopped otherwise. And to be fair, it never did stop. If Erwin survived season 3 and continued being commander in season 4, do you think he could have handled things better than Hanji? I mean, I sort of answered this already, but the more I think about it, it really could go either way. It depends on how you view Erwin as a character. We would like to think that Erwin would have fought with Mikasa and all of them and helped stop the rumbling, but I don't think Erwin was like that, honestly. I feel like he would have had some confliction between, because like he spent his whole life wondering what was beyond the walls and then like finally seeing it. I mean, I feel like he would have shared a similar sentiment to Eren, though, where it's just like Eren, he thought that there was nothing beyond parity, beyond the walls, and when he discovered there actually was something, he was disappointed. And as such, he nearly made it that there was truly nothing beyond the walls of parity. I feel like Erwin, yeah, he would have been initially fascinated with everything beyond the wall, but then much like with what happened with Eren Eren and all them, it's just like he would have come to the same realization where it's no matter where you go, there's walls. The people are the same. There's subjugation, racism, war. It's like, though I feel like Erwin would have initially, I feel like would have loved being outside the walls and seeing the world. Eventually, yeah, I think it would have led to Erwin siding with Eren. There's a really cool animation that I saw recently where, yeah, if Erwin inherited the Colossal Titan, and it's the scene where, you know, Willie has his play and like he's doing all that, and Erwin just walks up and turns into the Colossal Titan and just blows everyone away. Having both Erwin and Flock, like with Eren, that truly would have been unstoppable. Especially in this what if, it would have been the thing that like Levi did choose Erwin. Armin would be dead, in which case Mikasa, Hanji, all them who eventually fight against everyone else lose like their, as Erwin once said, humanity's greatest weapon. Though Mikasa and Levi are strong Ackermans in their own right, that is the one part that would have been interesting to see, is just how would Erwin handle Zeke and all that? Would Erwin even personally see to Levi's execution maybe? Because Erwin obviously knows better than most just how good Levi is and how problematic he would be in the long run. So I feel like instead of having Zeke be the one to handle Levi, which ultimately worked but didn't work, like I fully see in a what if where Erwin is the one who maybe personally kills Levi, or at least tries to. I fully want to tackle that what if myself, because I have to fully like sit down and like script it and like think about it, because I think I could do it, or at least I'll try my best. Do you think Eren is in the wrong for annihilating almost the whole world, or was it the scouts who's wrong for denying the people's freedom and deserve to be called traitor? Which side do you support, Jaegerists or Survey Corps? It's funny like looking at the reactions as they come out. I do remember vividly being like, oh man, fuck Flock, fuck all the Jaegerists and all that, and I just like seeing the comments of people just like, how dare you say that about Flock? I'm a Jaegerist till the day I die. Again, it's this show that fucks with the perspective and does it amazingly well. I'm fully on the side of Hanji and all of them in the sense that genocide is wrong, period. If you say otherwise, please watch Vinland Saga and come back to me later. It's good that I've watched Vinland Saga before watching this. Vinland Saga changed my whole view on violence and all that in such a way, you know, I have no enemies. I kind of want to see the world in which I watched Attack on Titan first, because I feel like I would have been much more bloodthirsty. I mean, it doesn't help that the show like fully tried to portray Flock in such a way that he appears like a straight up supervillain. You know, I'll never forget that face he made when he turned around and went, shh. Have whatever opinions you want, you can't deny. That was some goofy fucking like James Bond villain type shit that he did. Were the scouts in the wrong for denying their people's freedom? Sure. The way I look at it, it's just how the rumbling ultimately carried out, where it's like, you know, Eren deletes 80% of the world's population, pretty much wipes out all the military except for Parodies. So as such, Parody can be the ruling military force and everyone else is sort of brought down to their level. It was the balance of both to where it's like the entire world still has a chance to thrive and be better, in the words of Kratos, but at the same time the Jaegerists and Parody can still be free from that. I mean, but as the final season set up, you know, there's still gonna be a civil war that probably breaks out on Parody itself. You know, we saw that with Keith Shadis and like all them like telling some of those cadets just like play the long game, be subservient to them, wait for your chance, and then you can strike back. And even at the very end where we see like the new banner and all them, just like the world moves on. In terms of who was right, who was wrong, I mean, for the sake of the story to progress at all, I can't see it going a different way than what it did. It always makes me sad though, and it hurts just seeing the episode where they all have to massacre like all the scouts. I would have liked to have seen where they were able to get to the boat and get away without having to kill anybody, but it made for a hell of an action scene. In the last few episodes, Eren often showed up as his 10-year-old self instead of his 19-year-old self. Why? For the iconic freedom panel, it makes sense that it's his kid self, because that's, I guess, like his pure self. You know, it's Eren at the start of the story connecting with Eren to now, even though when you look at it, it's all Eren. It all always has been Eren. I mean, I thought the symbolism was perfect, like having Emir with like the shaded eyes and then having his kid self with those same eyes, where it's just like he's become like that. Where it's like, you know, it's taking the child, you know, just like this pure innocence and showing just the monster he's become. Justifiable monster, because, you know, he is the result of what Marley and the rest of the world has made the Eldians. Out of their fear of what they can do, their fears became reality. All from just this child. Again, like one of my favorite scenes is when Eren and all the Colossal Titans come to the shores of Marley, and it shows just those flashes of Eren's mom getting eaten and just showing Eren like screaming out, Yamero! because it's like it's all from that. And then even in the final episode, when there's that commander who's just like, the Marleyans, everybody, like, we spent all this time subjugating these people and doing this, and now the result of that hatred and darkness has come to life. It's just a result of just like, you know, just seeing this child, you know, pure, just this innocent, albeit murderous child. It has and forever was doomed to be the monster Eren. Do you think there's any other way to solve the problem in Parody Island other than Eren's rumbling or Zeke's euthanization? I mean, I was saying it as it was happening in the videos. It's just like, why can't Eren just take away all the Titan powers? But obviously, as I've stood with it now and really understood more of it, that would have been the worst thing I think he could have done at the time, just, you know, taking out all the Titan powers, because then now the Eldians truly have no defense, and it's just like, all right, now we can just wipe them out. I feel like it would have been fine if he just like wiped out all of their militaries, but I get that there will always be those who take that place, you know, as a chain of command, as Erwin once said. Zeke's euthanization plan, though, I didn't fully support that ever. That's why I didn't like the scene like towards the end where Yelena was just like, I'll help you, but you need to admit that Zeke was right. And the fact that Hanji actually said he was, which, no, I don't think that was the right decision either. Would it have led to less bloodshed? Maybe, but I still feel like it kind of maybe would have led to the same result that we ultimately see by the very end, where our immediate group of characters are fine for now, but then it eventually down the line, when once all their Makana just gets wiped out. But that's why I'm fascinated with the world after the events, like what we see in the flashes when the cities are built and all the war. It's just how are Eldians looked at all these centuries later? Like what ultimately led to them, the nuking of Parody and all that. That's why I would very much be open to seeing a sequel, sort of, or just something that takes place long after all this. Like, you know, what is set up with that kid and the dog going into the tree? Maybe Eren's head, you know, became that source of life, and then that kid becomes a new Amir kind of thing. Ultimately, there's a lot I could talk about with this show. Endlessly. Like, I thank you all for all the questions. I maybe want to do another Q&A once the reaction series on YouTube is fully done, just so that there's more people that then submit questions and anything like that. I'm still planning to do a video where I get a bunch of friends together. I was gonna do it a lot sooner, but then I found out that my one friend who was also watching the show, who I thought would have been done by the time I was done, hasn't finished it yet. That's why I really want to have just these kind of conversations with friends, just like what? Because with anything, you know, especially with how the political scene is nowadays, everyone has different opinions, different views on it. And I think this show, more than most, can have such polarizing views on stuff, especially like certain decisions that are made, you know. Though I may have my certain views of the world, and even in this, that I'm steadfast, just like, no, I believe this way. Again, though I may have my beliefs, I'm not like most people who have those beliefs and I'm just like la 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 to anything else. I'm fully open to having those conversations with other people, just like, why do you think it that way? And it's just like, how can we sort of make a bridge to these two ideas, you know? It's those kind of conversations that need to be had, where it's just like, no, let's not just like yell at each other with megaphones from across a vast plane of nothing. Let's make a road to each other. Let's make an impasse. Let's talk. Let's not perpetuate a cycle of violence that leads to a kid having his mother being eaten and then turning into a giga demon that tramples 80% of the world. Again, Attack on Titan is going to be a show that I continuously make videos about, and though a lot of it may lead to me talking about the same stuff over and over again, I don't give a shit. This show is something you can always find something to talk about with it. Take any scene, any character, you can break them down in such a way, and it's just like, oh my god, it's so masterful. And the fact that it's just interwoven and written in such a way, and it's just like, it just works. Whether how much of it was actually intentional or just a happy coincidence, doesn't matter. It just works. No matter where I am, who you are, let's talk about this show. And yeah, of course, stay tuned for many other videos of the sort like this, be they future Attack on Titan reviews and anything and discussions. All of that will be coming out soon. So thank you all for joining me on this. I'm Lancer. Thanks for watching.